I know it's been a while again since I posted, and also a while since Halloween, but I didn't want to go further into the holiday season without talking about this costume that I made for Halloween a couple weeks ago. Phantom of the Opera, that was my theme this year. I've been trying to make a couple's costume every year. Before 2020, it was actually kind of hard for us to do a lot of Halloween stuff just because of life, but now that I have more time and I actually know how to sew. So if you know me or if you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I've only been sewing for the past 2, maybe 3 years. So this whole making a costume thing is really new for me. I'm mostly trying to figure out. For last year I made Star Trek costumes, which was sort of easy because I did follow a pattern, but for this year I went a little more rogue. Why Phantom of the Opera? Well, to start with, if you don't know, I'm a huge fan of just Broadway musicals. When I moved to New York, I made myself the promise that I would go at least to 1 musical a year, and so far I've kept it. Even in 2020, I went actually to see Phantom of the Opera on February 2020, so it was the last show I saw for a long time. I've seen a plenty ever since. I'm just a big musical nerd. If you don't know, the Phantom of the Opera was the longest running show on Broadway, was because it's actually closing later this year, I think by the end of the year. So I guess that hearing the news about a show that's so iconic, since it's been there for so long and it kind of marked the way that a lot of musicals are done today, and Halloween approaching, I thought it would be perfect to do a costume about that. And so for these costumes, I wanted to keep it as simple as possible because I made this decision only a couple weeks before Halloween, so I didn't have a lot of time. So not every part of the costume was made by me. For the Phantom costume, I did buy a mask. It would be easier than making it. And for Christine, I bought a wig that I thought really made a difference on the look and like feeling very 80s and just looking like the character. But then I went and made the 2 parts of the costume. So for Phantom, I decided I wanted to make a cape. And for Christine, I wanted to make the iconic white dressing gown. Because I couldn't find the pattern specifically for her dressing gown, I had to improvise. So this is what I did. I actually started with the cape, and that was more straightforward. I just wanted like big flowy cape, and I wanted it to be lined just because I like to make things difficult for myself. And so I bought like a simple black fabric for the outside part of it, and then like satin type of fabric for the lining, just to keep that weight. And I'm really glad that I did, because even though it was more work, it did give it more of a weight. It looked really nice, I think. To make the cape, I actually just followed a tutorial. I'll link it somewhere in here, but it was a lot of math mostly because the fabric that I bought was only like 45 inches wide, something like that, and it would have been easier if it had been 60 inches width. So I had to cut like triangles, shapes, like cone shapes on it, and then sew all those pieces together to just create that semi-circle shape, or like almost complete circle shape. And then do exactly the same thing for the lining, and sew all of those parts together. And once I had both of the pieces, I could sew them together on the sides and then turn it inside out so that all of the raw edges would be on the inside. So that was not hard, it just was a lot of work. I also hurt my foot sometime in between the making of this cape, and I just had like a small sprain, which meant I couldn't quite be on the ground cutting all these pieces. I figured how to do it, but I think that meant that the lining, which I cut after I had been hurt, wasn't quite as well measured, I think, as the outer side. So I have some trouble just kind of like finding the size and putting it together. But in the end, I figured it out. I put both pieces together, and then all I had left was the neck. And I actually didn't have enough fabric for the neck, so I had to kind of be creative again and think of a way of how to make a neck for it. And after some thinking, I decided I wanted it to make it kind of like a fussy type of neck for the cape. I don't know, I don't think that's quite what the costume looks like, but it just felt more, I don't know, appropriate, I guess, for the Phantom than just like a boring neck. So I went to a craft store and I bought some velour, black velour, and I made the neck just a simple rectangle neck that I sewed onto the cape. And that was really it. All I had to do after that was press it, and it was pretty impressive. I think it looked great. And it fit my husband. I think it fits me too, a little longer than him, but I don't know, I think I could use it for something else if I wanted to. So my second challenge, Christine Daae's dress, it's a little more complex than that. Like I said, didn't have a pattern for it, so I had to kind of think of a way of make something that looks kind of like it. I can't quite make my own patterns yet. So I found a pattern of a wrap dress that kind of works looking like a dressing gown, and my plan was to just make that out of a fabric that gave it that same look and then add frills. So I bought this fabric that it was like a white satin, and I didn't want it just to be white. And it, you know, those satin fabrics, they just fray so much. So I actually went ahead and overlocked the whole thing, everything. First I didn't even have white overlocking thread. I did some of it, then parts that I knew that nobody was gonna see, I did them with black, and then when I finally got the overlocking thread that was white, I finished with that. It had a lot of pieces because it kind of wraps in the front, and it has like the bust part, and then on top of that I had to add like the frill that went around the wrap dress, and then finally I had to add all the frills. So first I bought a ribbon that I think also at the craft store, and I didn't quite like how it was looking. So before I actually sew it onto anything, I ended up going to the garment district here in New York to find this very specific trim, but I actually did find some, and I paid way too much more than I should for it, but whatever, it ended up being great. So I bought this trim lace that I added it to the neck, and it took me a couple tries to get it right, but I finally figured out how to add it to the neck, and then I also added it to the sleeves, and I think that made the difference. Like, that made the dress what it was. I thought about adding the trim also to the skirt, but I didn't have enough, and not only that I don't have enough, I don't know, I thought that was too much, and that just leaving it the way it was worked. So that was really the end of the dress. I was finishing the dress the day of I was having a party, Halloween party with some friends, and that day I was still fixing some small things, but I actually finished it a lot faster than I think I've ever sewn anything, which made me feel good about my skills. So this is how we look together. Like I said, I am so happy with this costume. I actually really like that dressing gown. I already have my mom claiming it. I think it's really fun. It turned out really cute, and it could be a dressing gown. And the like I said, the cape, I feel like, okay, now we have a cape, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of other costumes. I can already think of a few. So I kind of proved that you don't need to be able to make your own patterns to make it work. Sometimes you just put things together and add an extra thing and you get there. Maybe this is something that everybody knows, but I figured it out on my own. I'm very much like I follow the steps to get to the end, so I was out of my comfort zone finding those extra steps that would work only for my specific idea. So it was an interesting challenge, and I can't wait for next Halloween already.
There's only 365 days left till next Halloween! 364!
That was my Phantom of the Opera costumes. I hope you enjoyed this video, and that I will see you again on the next one. But in the meantime, if you're on TikTok, make sure to find me there, because I post there a lot more often. Also on Instagram, because it's just shorter and easier, but I do miss my YouTube crowd, so I'll be back with more stuff, holiday related stuff and other. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and happy making!